Hi everyone. I want to share a couple sources with you from the Seattle Central Library. And to do that, we'll need to go to the Seattle Central .edu website. And when you get there to go to the library, go to Services. And in the drop down, just go ahead and click on Seattle Central Library. So this is the first screen that you see when you go to the library website. And for the people who are working on the chronology, this is specifically for you. I want you to try looking for a source that's called American Decades. So I'm going to type that in here, American Decades. And I already know that that's the title of the publication, so I'm going to choose title. And when I find these sources here, one of the things that I can see is that there are books, and then there are also electronic sources. And notice that there are electronic sources that go from the 2000s. So there's one for the decade of the 2000s already. What I want you to do is go ahead and click on this first one here, or not the first one, but the first electronic source. And then let's take a look at it. It gives you some of the subjects, and one thing that you'll see is that inside of this particular ebook, this electronic book, is information about the 1910s, the 1920s, the 1930s, etc. And we want that information. So instead of clicking down here, we'll talk about when to click down here in the future. I just want you to choose View eBook. This gives you the information that you need about the publication, and that's important. But we'll talk more about that later. Right now, I just want you to get into the information. And so what you can do is click on Table of Contents. And this is I had to tell you, this is my favorite library source of all time. Down here it says choose a volume. And so these volumes are about these decades. So you can read about the major events of the 1900s, the major events of the 1910s, the 1920s. We're looking at the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s for the namesake. So if I were to just go ahead and pick one out here, say the 1960s, I end up with this right here, which are these particular topics. Notice that there's a list of events that were important in the world outside of the United States that were happening at the same time. But this book, this series really focuses on the United States. You can look up information about the arts. If I click the down arrow here, it will show you the major areas there, and it has an overview of the arts in the 1960s. It also has a chronology of the major events that happened in the 1960s in terms of the arts. And so you can go ahead, take a look. I don't want to scroll too much, but you kind of get the idea there. I'm going to go back and click on all of a sudden my brain I just had an accident in my brain. Oh, okay. If I click down on art again, I can look at the overview. So in the overview, there's just some information about what generally was happening in the 1960s in terms of the arts movement. You're going to find that exact same kind of essay for each topic. So if I take us down to, say, law and justice, I can look at a timeline. I can also look at an overview and see what was happening in the 1960s. You can see there's different topics that are here, right? Voting rights, we talk about that. Criminal rights. There's just a lot of great information here. And if I want to look at something in particular, for example, if I click on lifestyles and social trends, I can click on the important events that were happening. I can also click on these topics that are in the news, or headlines, big things that were happening during that time. People that were important during that time. So if I click on that one, just out of curiosity, I can go and see a list of people who really happen to show up in the news for a variety of reasons. And then I can click back out. Now, this is important for the namesake, but it's also important for you as a student who is not from the United States. When you're in a class and a teacher mentions some kind of a movement or some politician or some major figure or some big event, if you're not sure about what it is, of course you can Google it, but you can also look through a source like this, like American Decades, to get an understanding not only of the event itself, but how it fit into what was happening in the United States. Under Law and Justice, you have the same topics. You can see the overview topics in the news. And you'll find that for the 1970s as well. You can click in the 1970s and you can see what was going on, say, in government and politics. You can click on there and find out what were some of the important events of the 1970s. Now, the nice thing about this feature is that you can find something that's interesting to you, and then it gives you information that helps you look for other information. So this is kind of a jumping off place. You get some good information here, but you might just want to use it to get more. So that's the one thing that I wanted to share with you for right now, and that was American Decades. Good luck.